G'day coppers, welcome back to the bush. Actually, Matt's garage again. Now, in this video, it's the first of a three-part series on the high lift jack. The first video will be dealing exclusively with the high lift jack and essential mods that you can do to make your high lift jack work better out in the field before you head out there. The second video will be looking at the off-road kit. So this is the winching kit. The essential mods to do with the off-road kit and how to use it out in the field. And in the third video, we'll be checking out accessories like the LiftMate, which makes your jack more universal. But first up, let's have a look at the high lift jack. Now this jack is a high lift branded jack and it's a 60-inch extreme model. Now you can go out and for less money, go out and buy yourself a knockoff brand. But as I say, buy once, cry once. These are a little more expensive, but the expense is definitely worth it. I was traveling across the Simpson Desert with a couple of mates of mine, and one of them had to use his high lift, knockoff high lift, not the original high lift, to lift up his vehicle to access the suspension and make a repair. It got stuck with the vehicle up in the air. Luckily I had mine there, and to the rescue, lifted up his vehicle off his jack. Not sure if he's still got it. He probably doesn't. I think he's changed over the original high lift and lowered the vehicle. So you're doing yourself a disservice if you're buying an off-brand jack. These guys have been making jacks like this for in excess of 100 years. So I'd recommend, if you're going to get yourself a jack, go and get yourself the high lift jack. Now let's get into the mods. First up, of course, we've got to get rid of the instructions. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to strip it down. So this is the clamping or winching head. That simply pops out there. And we've got the handle here, of course. And what we're going to do is we're going to lift up the reversing latch. This is the reversing latch. That's the lowering position. That's the lifting position, and we're going to remove the lifting assembly. And we'll put this assembly aside, and we'll get to that in a minute. So all we're left now with is the standard and the base. Now the extreme model, as you see, comes with a pin, so you can remove the base. If you have one of the lower models, they don't have the pin, and I'd highly recommend getting the pin. As you can see, it's a different distance from the securing point front to back, and sometimes you'll need it closer to this side, and you can turn the foot around if you have the pin. Some people like to secure the pin to the base, but when I take the base off for winching or something like that, I'll just put the pin back on. Alright, so we've got our trusty battery operated master key. Take off my C&I dogs. Put on the safety squints. And we're just going to give it a light rub over the top. Not with the intention of getting down to the base material, just with the intention of taking a bit of a layer off the top. Okay, now as you can see in the photograph, we've just taken the top off. We haven't gotten down to the base material. A little bit on the edge, but that's not going to hurt things. And that'll stop the build-up of material, so operating the jack, as you can see in the photograph where we're winching with the high lift jack, it's scraped the paint off from one end just about all the way to the other. And that'll gum up your mechanism. So we do that to stop the paint coming off, getting into the mechanism, and gumming it up. Righto, the standard's finished. Let's move on to the mechanism itself. Alright, so next thing we want to do is we want to remove the standard handle from the lifting unit. Let's see if we can lever that out. There we go. Now the handle comes out easily. Now what you can do is you can drill a hole clean through from one side to the other and replace it with a hitch pin so you can take the handle in and out. And the reason you want to do that is then you can use this for extra leverage on things like sockets and breaker bars. Or you can do as we've done, and we've made up an extension handle which we'll show you in a minute. But first up, let's have a look at the lifting unit. Righto, and now we need to further modify the lifting mechanism. Now you can see the climbing pins here, so we've got the two climbing pins here, and they have spring retainers and cross pins, top and bottom. What we need to do is we need to drive out the cross pin because we want to smooth off these surfaces here. Now especially if the high lift jack isn't lowering cleanly, it's getting stuck occasionally, usually the culprit is a build-up of crud here. So what we'll do is we'll drive the pins out and then we'll clean it up. We'll do one at a time. Now we've got the pin out. We can remove the climbing pin. Remember the orientation it goes in. Then the spring, and as springs do it as sprung. And put the spring to the side as well. Now I'll get the Dremel out and we'll smooth off these surfaces. Okay, so I've grabbed my Dremel and we're just going to sand off these surfaces. Again, we don't want to go down to the base material, we just want to clean them up a bit. So our cross pin, which is here, can now slide smoothly over those surfaces and it won't get stuck. It'll help you when you're lowering down the jack. We've done that one now, and I'll save you from watching me doing the other one, and we're about to do this one. Now one important consideration when you're reassembling it is the orientation of the climbing pin. So it could be 180 degrees out and still fit in fine. Unfortunately it won't work like that. So when you're putting it together, the chamfers need to face up on both of the climbing pins. Make sure the chamfers are facing towards the top of the jack. Now we've finished refining the jacking head, let's put it back onto the standard. Right, yeah, and we should check that the mechanism actually works. So that's in the raising position. That's going up fine. And now the lowering position, if there's weight on it, that's also working fine. And if there's no weight on it, it should drop, which it does. So we know we've got the orientation of the pins around the right way. But there's one other trick to stop the thing rattling on your roof rack. We'll do that in a second. Now when your high loof's mounted to your roof rack, and you're going down corrugated road especially, you can imagine the noise. It drives you absolutely nuts. So what I do is I take the base off, I get a bit of electrical tape, and you have to form fit it around the standard. Just one layer. Pop the base back on. And that'll considerably dampen the amount of rattling you'll get from the base. We'll also have to deal with the handle, and we'll show you how to do that in a second. So now it comes to replacing the handle. Now this is a standard length handle, and this is my replacement handle. It is a little heavier, which is never a good thing in a four-wheel drive. I've also knurled a finish onto the end here in a lathe. Now, I understand not everyone has access to a lathe, so maybe you can go and get a bit of grip tape from your hardware supermarket to suffice that. It's also telescopic as well. You probably wouldn't use a telescopic feature of the handle while you're jacking, but let me tell you, when you're winching, the telescopic feature of this is an absolute godsend. But you have to watch out for the shear bolt. So the shear bolt's designed when you overload the jack, instead of the jack actually breaking, the shear bolt here will break before the jack does. So if you're struggling with a standard handle and then you extend it out even further and you're starting to struggle with that, well, maybe you need to reduce your recovery load. Maybe you need to do a double line pull. But if you're doing extended winching and you're within the limits of the winching arrangement, an extended handle is going to help you out no end. And the knurling, that's great in mud as well. Righto, let's go back to the assembly. Okay, so now we've installed the extension handle into the socket here, and we have 2 pins. The reason we have 2 pins is so when we are in extended mode, we can secure it. So we'll be able to put 1 pin, retain 1 pin down here. And as you can see, I've drilled a hole up here halfway through the handle in the knurling. So when it's extended, you can put the 2nd pin through there. That's the extent of the modifications that I personally do to a high lift. Other than when it's mounted, I'll try and secure the handle to the standard when it's in my roof rack mount so it doesn't rattle around. I usually use just a bungee cord for that. However, you can use commercially orientated products through Daystar or High Lift that fit around your handle. Though when you've gone for an aftermarket handle, you've made up your own, it's not going to work so well. Okay, so what I've done is join the load cell 75mm down from the end of the handle. This is a standard length handle, and I'm just going to pull it through in action, and we're going to check out the video on the load cell. Okay, seem to be around 30 to 32 kilograms, and now we'll check out the extension handle when it's compressed. Now we've installed the telescopic handle in its compressed state, and we'll give that a go. Now we'll review the footage. That looked to be a little bit over 20 kilograms. Excuse the plane. Okay, not that anyone's going to use a handle this long when jacking, only winching, but we'll give it a go anyway. Geez, I'm going to barely reach it. Okay, that seemed to peak about 5 kilograms. So let's check out the graph. Let's have a look at the standard handle. Now, from the pivot point or the fulcrum point, right to where you put your hand on the handle, 730mm, and torque, 32 kilograms of effort. Moving on to the aftermarket handle line knocked up, when the telescopic handle was compressed at 1160mm, took 21 kilograms of effort. Now, that's still a manageable amount of handle. You can use that when you're jacking up on the side of the road. And we saved 1/3 of the effort. But when we moved on to the extended handle, when it was telescoped out, that took 9 kilograms of effort. So again, a big saving, but that's not really manageable for jacking. It's in excess of 2 meters long, 2090mm. So that's great for winching, not so great for jacking, though you're going to have to look after your shear bolt, of course. So now the last thing you need to do before you use the high lift is to make sure you lubricate it. Now this is Xenox, but WD spray, CRC, one of those guys. Give it a good spraying in the mechanism there. You don't need to lubricate the standard itself, but in the mechanism, and work it through. So it's in the raising position at the moment, the reversing latch in the up position. And then run it down. Guys, these things take no prisoners, okay? if you're not trained, and we'll be looking at how to use a high lift jack properly in another video, be very careful, because they were designed last century, and in those days the OH&S wasn't what it is today. You need to be responsible for your own actions, and these things, if you become complacent, we'll let you know about it. We'll show you a photo later on. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Now if you've liked this video, don't forget to give it the old thumbs up, and if you haven't, by all means, give it the old thumbs down twice. Thanks guys, we'll see you in part 2. Now if you've liked this video, don't forget to give it the old thumbs up, and if you haven't, by all means, give it the old thumbs down twice. Thanks guys, we'll see you in part 2.
Didn't do subscribe. That's what we're chasing. Lucky.
That would have been massively out of focus.
Yeah.